So let's talk about the static method. Now a good example is to understand what a static method actually is. The built-in array.from method. And let's just do that here in the console. So remember that we have the array.from method which converts any array-like structures to a real array. So for example, array.from document.querySelector or h1. And so now we get an array here. But this is not really the point. What the point is that this from method here is a real method that is attached to the array constructor. So we could not use the from method on an array. So this is not gonna work. So from is not a function, and so that is because this from method here is really attached to the entire constructor, so the array constructor, and not to the prototype property of the constructor. And so therefore all the array do not inherit this method again because it's not on their prototype. It's simply attached to the constructor itself. So array.from here is basically just a simple function, but it's a function that is attached to the array constructor. And the reason for that is simply that proper node that is related to arrays. We also say that the from method is in the array namespace, and we actually used that term before for some methods and the number and internationalization namespace. Remember, for example, number.parseFloat. So that's the same thing. And so this method is another static method, and it's a static on the number constructor. So it's not available on numbers, but only on this very constructor. So this is a very good example that we understand what a static method is. And we usually use this kind of as helpers that should be related to a static constructor. And so maybe you can imagine that it should be pretty easy to implement static methods or say. And let's do that for both our constructor function and also for the class. So here I already have the constructor function that we wrote right at the beginning of the session. So this person here, to add an static method, all we have to do is write person, and let's say we want to create a very simple hey function, so which is something like a wave when we call it. So let's just say console log hey there, the emoji. So now in order to call this, it's pretty easy. So we just have to do person.hey. That's it. So we now should get this hey there. Of course, this one is not inherited. So just like we cannot call the from method on array, we cannot say John hey because it is simply not in the prototype of the John object. So there is no way that John object could inherit it. As you see, John hey is not a function. Now just take a look at this keyword here. But this again should be pretty obvious. And so that's essentially the entire constructor function here. The reason for that is because that is exactly the object that is called the method. And so as always, that is basically the rule. So whatever object is called the method will be this keyword inside of that function. And so here this keyword is simply that entire constructor function. And so now let's quickly take this, do the same in the class. Here to create a static method, all we need to do here is to add a static keyword. So static hey and the console log. That's it. So that is a static method. Why this one is called instant method? So at it say here, this is a method that will be added to the prototype property so that all instances can have access to them, and therefore the name instant method. And now we can simply let's do that at the end. We can simply do %cf.hey. And again we get hey there, and this time this keyword points to the entire class. So keep in mind that these static methods are not available on the instances, and sometimes they are useful to implement some kind of helper function about a class or about a constructor function.